The cold wind whipped through the open window of the taxi as Emily gripped her small, worn-out suitcase. Her fingers trembled, not from the chill but from the fear that any moment her husband might realize she was gone. Her heart pounded like a drum inside her chest. It had taken her 3 years, 3 long years of broken promises, silent tears, and bruised dreams, to find the courage to leave. And now she was finally doing it. "Where to, miss?" the driver asked, glancing through the rearview mirror. "Airport," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Emily had no plan, no destination in mind, just a ticket she had bought online at midnight after another night of yelling and slammed doors. The ticket was to Seattle, far enough from the small town where everyone knew her as Michael's wife, but close enough that she could start again. She didn't even know where she would stay. All she knew was she couldn't stay there anymore. The taxi pulled up to the terminal. Emily stepped out, her legs weak, her heart heavy. As she joined the line for check-in, her phone buzzed. It was him. "Michael, where are you?" "Dinner's getting cold." She froze. For a second, guilt gnawed at her chest. He'd always known how to sound gentle when he needed control. Her fingers hovered over the screen, but then she took a deep breath and turned the phone off. For the first time, silence felt like peace. At the gate, she tried to steady her hands as she held her boarding pass. "Flight 1024, she murmured, looking at the small letters. But in her panic and exhaustion, she didn't notice the flight number glowing on the screen above her gate read 1042. When the boarding call came, she followed the crowd, too distracted to realize she was walking toward a completely different plane. The flight attendant smiled politely, scanning her ticket without a second glance. Emily walked down the aisle, clutching her bag like a lifeline. She found her seat by the window and exhaled, finally feeling like she'd made it. She was free. As the plane lifted off the ground, tears rolled down her cheeks. She looked out at the shrinking city lights, whispering to herself, "Goodbye, Michael. Goodbye to everything that hurt." Hours passed. Emily dozed off, exhaustion finally catching up. When she woke up, the flight attendant was announcing their descent. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Anchorage, Alaska." Her eyes flew open. "Wait, what?" Her hands trembled as she pulled out her ticket. "Seat 17A, Flight 1024 to Seattle." But the intercom clearly said Anchorage. She stared around in confusion. The woman beside her smiled kindly. "First time to Alaska?" Emily's lips parted, but no words came. She'd gotten on the wrong plane. When she stepped out of the airport, snowflakes drifted softly onto her coat. The air was freezing, clean, and strangely beautiful. She was thousands of miles from where she planned to be, and yet, she wasn't scared. For the first time in years, she wasn't under someone's shadow. As she looked around the white, glimmering horizon, she realized maybe this wasn't a mistake. Maybe fate had chosen for her. She smiled faintly and whispered to herself, "Maybe I boarded the right plane after all." But Emily had no idea. Her accidental landing in Alaska would soon lead her to a stranger who would change her life forever. The cold air bit at Emily's cheeks as she stepped outside the terminal. The ground was layered with soft white snow, crunching beneath her worn-out boots. She pulled her thin jacket tighter, instantly regretting not grabbing the warmer one she'd left hanging by the door back home. But then again, home wasn't home anymore. It was just a place filled with broken glass and broken promises. People rushed past her, laughing, hugging loved ones, greeting families. Emily stood still in the middle of it all, her small suitcase at her feet, feeling utterly invisible. She took a shaky breath, trying not to panic. "Okay, Emily," she whispered to herself. "You can do this, just figure out where you are first." Her phone was still off. Turning it on meant risking messages, calls, maybe even tracking. No, she couldn't go back. Not now. She walked toward a bench near the exit and sat down, her hands shaking from the cold. A tear slipped down her cheek. For the first time, doubt crept in. Had she made the biggest mistake of her life? Just then, a voice broke through her thoughts. "You okay, miss?" Emily looked up to see a man in a thick winter coat holding a paper cup of coffee. He looked to be in his early 40s, rugged but kind-eyed, with snowflakes melting in his dark hair. "Oh, I'm fine," she stammered, brushing her tears quickly. "Just a little lost," he smiled, setting his coffee down beside her. "You don't look like you're dressed for Anchorage weather." "Where were you headed?" "Seattle," she said softly, her lips trembling. Seattle. He chuckled gently. Well, you took quite a detour. Emily laughed weakly despite herself. Yeah, I'm realizing that now. The man extended his hand. Name's Jack. She hesitated for a second before taking it. Emily. Well, Emily, he said, standing tall, you can't stay out here in this cold. The weather's supposed to drop below freezing tonight. Come on, at least let me get you a warm meal. There's a diner just down the road. No strings attached. Emily hesitated. The last time a man offered her something, it came with a price, not shouting, guilt, pain. But there was something steady in Jack's voice, something she hadn't heard in years. Sincerity. She nodded slowly. Okay, thank you. The diner was small, glowing warmly against the icy backdrop. As soon as they stepped in, the scent of coffee and fresh pie wrapped around her like a blanket. The waitress, a cheerful woman with silver hair, greeted them. Jack, your usual seat? You know me too well, Marla, he said with a grin. And bring something hot for my friend here. Emily sat across from him, thawing slowly. Her hands wrapped around the steaming mug, and for a long moment, she just watched the snow fall outside the window. Jack leaned back, studying her gently. You look like someone who's been running for a while. Her chest tightened. Something like that, she said, looking away. He didn't press. Instead, he changed the subject. So what do you do, Emily? I used to paint, she said quietly. I stopped a few years ago. Jack smiled softly. Then maybe Alaska's exactly where you're meant to be. Lots of inspiration here, sunsets, mountains, frozen lakes. It's like the world hits pause up here. His words lingered in her heart. For years, Michael had told her art was a waste of time, that no one would ever care about her childish hobby. Hearing someone talk about it with warmth felt like breathing after drowning. As they finished their meal, Emily realized she hadn't laughed or smiled this freely in years. But the warmth of the moment made her feel guilty too, like she was betraying the person she used to be, even though that version of her had been broken for so long. When they stepped outside again, the night sky shimmered with northern lights, ribbons of green and purple dancing across the darkness. Emily gasped, It's beautiful. Jack nodded. Yeah, happens when the world wants to remind us there's still magic left even after everything. She turned toward him, the colors reflecting in her eyes. Thank you. For tonight, he shrugged with a smile. You don't owe me thanks. Just promise me one thing. Don't give up before the story gets good. Emily smiled faintly. Deal. As Jack drove away after dropping her at a small motel nearby, she watched his truck fade into the snow. A warmth filled her chest, not from safety, not yet, but from hope. She didn't know it then. But meeting Jack would be the first chapter of a brand new life, one that would test her, heal her, and eventually lead her home again. Emily woke up to the sound of wind rattling the motel window. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it hit her in the snow, the plane, the diner, Jack. A wave of relief washed over her. For once, there was no shouting, no footsteps pacing in anger, no phone vibrating with threats disguised as apologies. Just quiet. She sat up, pulling the thin blanket around her. The motel room was small but warm, with a small heater humming by the wall. On the nightstand was a paper bag. She frowned, curious, and opened it to find a breakfast sandwich, a thermos of coffee, and a note written in neat, simple handwriting. Figured you might sleep in. Breakfast's on me. Jack. A smile crept onto her face. A small, cautious one, but real. She hadn't realized how long it had been since someone had done something kind for her without wanting anything in return. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Maybe this was what starting over felt like, uncertain, fragile, but alive. After breakfast, she walked outside. The air was sharp and cold, but the morning sun glowed softly on the snow, turning everything silver. She noticed a small art supply shop across the street, its window filled with brushes and blank canvases. Her heart tugged. Almost without thinking, she crossed the street and stepped inside. The smell of paint and wood hit her instantly. It felt like home, the kind she had lost years ago. Can I help you, miss? An elderly man behind the counter asked kindly. I'm just looking, she said, touching a set of brushes. It's been a while. Well, he said with a grin, the best way to start again is to stop waiting for the right time. There isn't one. You just pick up the brush. She chuckled softly. You sound like you've said that before. Hundreds of times, he said. But you're the first one I think might actually believe it. Emily left the shop with a small sketchbook and a few pencils. That night in her little motel room she drew until her hand cramped. She drew the snow, the diner, the northern lights, and without meaning to, she drew Jack. His calm smile, his steady eyes. Days passed. Jack checked in on her almost every evening, sometimes with coffee, sometimes just to ask how she was doing. They'd sit outside the diner talking for hours about art, life, and second chances. Slowly, Emily felt herself breathing easier, laughing more. But just as her heart began to thaw, the past found her again. One evening, she walked into the diner and froze. The TV above the counter was showing the news and her picture. Her wedding photo, actually. The caption read, "Local woman missing. Husband pleads for her safe return." Her stomach dropped. The reporter's voice echoed in her ears. Michael Rivers, a respected businessman, says he fears for his wife's safety after she vanished suddenly 3 weeks ago. He urges anyone with information to come forward. Emily's blood ran cold. The image of Michael's fake, worried face made her hands tremble. She knew that look, the charm, the manipulation. He wasn't worried. He was hunting. Jack noticed immediately. "Emily, what's wrong?" She couldn't speak. She just pointed at the screen. Jack's expression hardened as he read the headline. "That's you." She nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't run away because I wanted to hurt him. I ran because I had to survive, Jack. You don't understand what he's like when the doors close." Jack took a deep breath, his jaw tightening. "You don't have to explain. You're safe here." "No, I'm not," she whispered. "He has connections. If he finds me—" He cut her off gently. "Then he'll have to go through me first." Emily stared at him, her heart pounding for a different reason now. Not fear, but something she hadn't felt in years. Trust. That night, back at the motel, she sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her sketchbook. Every line, every drawing was a piece of her reborn self. But now she realized, freedom wouldn't come from running forever. It would come from facing the past. She picked up her phone for the first time in weeks. The screen lit up with dozens of missed calls, voicemails, messages, all from him. Her fingers hovered over the delete all button. Then she saw one unread message from an unknown number. "You deserve better than your past. Don't be afraid to live again." Her breath caught. It wasn't from Michael. It was from Jack. She smiled through her tears. Maybe this time she wasn't running away anymore. Maybe she was finally running toward something, or someone. But the story was far from over. Because as Emily would soon find out, Michael wasn't done looking, and destiny wasn't done testing her courage. Snow fell thick and heavy over Anchorage that evening, blanketing the streets in silence. The town looked peaceful, almost asleep, but Emily's heart was pounding like thunder. She couldn't shake the image from the TV. That photograph of her smiling beside the man who had stolen her joy. For days after the news report, she barely left the motel. Every time a car slowed outside or footsteps echoed in the hallway, her chest tightened. She knew how Michael operated. He never shouted in public, never raised a hand where someone might see. But when he wanted something, he always found a way to get it. Jack tried to reassure her. He visited often, sometimes bringing food, sometimes just sitting quietly to keep her company. "He can't control you anymore," he told her softly. "You're free now, Emily." But she wasn't sure freedom existed for someone like her, someone who had been trapped for so long. She'd forgotten what safety felt like. One morning, she decided she couldn't live in fear forever. She packed her things, checked out of the motel, and told herself she'd find an apartment, maybe even start painting commissions again. She was tired of hiding. At the diner that evening, she sat with Jack by the window, sketching the snowfall outside. He smiled, watching her hand move across the page. "That's beautiful," he said. "You've got real talent." Emily smiled faintly. "It's the first time I've drawn without feeling guilty." Just as she said it, the bell over the diner door jingled and every drop of blood in her body froze. Sahil. He stood there, tall, polished, wearing the same expensive coat she'd bought him for their last anniversary. His eyes scanned the diner slowly like a predator tracking scent. Then they landed on her. Emily. Her pencil slipped from her hand. Her mouth went dry. How did you find you? His smile didn't reach his eyes. You think I wouldn't? You're my wife. Jack stood immediately, stepping slightly in front of her. Sir, I think you should leave. Michael looked him up and down, his voice dripping with contempt. And who exactly are you? Someone who won't let you hurt her again. A few people in the diner were watching now. Michael's jaw tightened. He lowered his voice, keeping his tone calm, the way he always did before he struck. Emily, we're going home. This little game has gone on long enough. Emily's heart raced. Every part of her wanted to shrink, to obey, to stop the storm she could see building in his eyes. But Jack's steady presence beside her gave her strength. She stood slowly, meeting Michael's gaze. No, she said quietly. I'm not going with you. His expression flickered, disbelief, then rage. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, she whispered. You don't own me anymore. Michael stepped forward, but Jack moved closer, his voice calm but firm. You should go. Right now. For a moment it looked like Michael might fight him, but the attention from the other diners made him hesitate. He glared at Emily, his voice sharp as ice. You'll regret this. Then he turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed felt endless. Emily stood frozen, shaking uncontrollably. Jack gently took her hand. You did it, he whispered. You stood up to him. Tears spilled down her cheeks. He'll come back. He always does. Then we'll be ready, Jack said softly. You're not alone anymore. Later that night, Emily sat by the motel window, watching snowflakes drift through the darkness. Her fear was still there, but it felt different. It wasn't control anymore. It was proof she'd survived. The next morning, Jack drove her to the local police station. Together, they spoke to an officer about what had happened, the years of abuse, the tracking, the threats. Emily trembled as she told her story, but Jack squeezed her hand, steadying her. By the end of the day, a restraining order was filed, and an officer promised to keep an eye on her. For the first time in years, she walked out of a building and didn't look over her shoulder. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she and Jack sat outside watching the northern lights again. The sky shimmered with color, brighter than before. Jack turned to her. You're stronger than you think, Emily. She smiled faintly. I didn't feel strong. That's how real strength looks, he said. You don't notice it until you've already survived. Emily looked up at the glowing sky. Maybe, just maybe, she could finally stop running. Maybe her story wasn't about escape anymore. It was about rebirth. But far away, in a hotel downtown, Michael sat alone, staring at his phone. His face twisted with anger as he whispered to himself, If I can't have her, no one will. The storm wasn't over yet. The days that followed felt both fragile and freeing. For the first time in years, Emily woke up without fear pressing on her chest. The morning light spilling through the motel window didn't feel like something to hide from. It felt like a promise. She spent her days painting again, not for anyone. Not to please or to escape, but to breathe. Every brushstroke was a release. The snow, the lights, the faces of strangers who had shown her kindness, all found their way onto the canvas. Jack visited often, sometimes helping her carry art supplies, sometimes just sitting in silence while she painted. You've changed, he said one evening as they shared coffee outside the diner. You're lighter, Emily smiled softly. Maybe because I finally stopped trying to erase the past. I'm learning to paint over it instead. Jack nodded, a proud smile tugging at his lips. You're incredible, you know that? She blushed, looking away. I don't feel incredible, just alive. But peace, she had learned, wasn't a permanent thing. It had to be chosen again and again. And fate was about to test that choice one last time. It happened 2 weeks later. Emily was walking back from the art shop when she noticed a dark car parked across the street near the motel. The windows were tinted, the engine idling. A chill ran down her spine. She didn't have to see the face inside to know. Michael. She hurried inside, locking the door. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone and dialed Jack's number. He's here, she whispered. Outside. I'm on my way, Jack said instantly. Minutes felt like hours. Then a knock, hard demanding. "Emily!" Michael's voice thundered through the door. "Open this door right now." She backed away, trembling. "Go away, Michael. I've called the police." "Don't make this harder," he said, voice sharp with fury. "You're my wife." Emily's heart pounded. "No," she said, her voice breaking but steady. "I was your prisoner. Not anymore." The door rattled as he tried the handle. Panic surged, but before he could break it open, headlights flashed outside. Jack's truck screeched to a stop. He jumped out, shouting, "Step away from the door." Michael turned, his rage turning toward Jack. "This isn't your business." "It is now," Jack shot back. The confrontation was fast, chaotic, shouts, movement, snow crunching under boots. For a terrifying second, it looked like Michael might charge, but the sound of approaching sirens cut through the air. Blue and red lights painted the snow. Two officers stepped out, hands firm, voices calm but commanding. "Sir, put your hands where we can see them." Michael froze, eyes darting between them and Emily standing in the doorway. "She's my wife," he shouted, desperation cracking through his arrogance. One officer shook his head. "Not anymore." They led him away, his voice echoing down the street until it faded completely. Emily stood still, tears streaming silently down her face. Jack stepped closer, his voice gentle. "It's over." She looked at him, shaking her head. "No, it's finally beginning." Weeks later, Emily boarded another plane, this time intentionally. Not running, not escaping, starting. Her art had gained attention locally, and a small gallery in Seattle had offered to feature her work. She smiled as she looked out the window at the white landscape below. Jack had driven her to the airport that morning. Before she left, he pressed something into her hand, a small wooden pendant shaped like a feather. "For when you forget how far you've flown," he'd said. Now, sitting on the plane, she held it tightly. The engines roared to life, but instead of fear, she felt peace. She had come full circle. From the woman who boarded the wrong plane running from pain, to the woman now boarding the right one toward purpose. As the plane lifted off, Emily whispered to herself, "I'm free." Below her, Alaska glimmered under the morning sun, quiet, cold, and endlessly beautiful. It had been the wrong destination once, but it had led her exactly where she was meant to be. Hook rejoin, closing narration. Sometimes the wrong turn leads to the right life. Sometimes what feels like a mistake is actually destiny in disguise. Emily didn't find freedom by running. She found it by facing what tried to break her. And maybe that's the message for all of us. No matter how lost we feel, the universe always knows the way home. So if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Kindness Tales Live, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Because sometimes one story can change everything.